Hello everybody, welcome to Spiritual Awakening 101. My name is Jerry Yakov and I'm your host. I'm also a student and teacher of a particular spiritual path called A Course in Miracles. Here's a copy of A Course in Miracles. And this can be obtained online, in bookstores, wherever, Amazon of course. So I highly recommend it. And the reason that I use A Course in Miracles, particularly for the Spiritual Awakening show on cable TV, is because I think it's a very universal spiritual path. It isn't a very narrow path that tries to inculcate people into a particular way of thinking. And it's not designed to present dogma or a particular formula that if you use it, you're going to get some kind of instant relief and so forth on a spiritual level. It's a process. It's a very pragmatic process, and I think it speaks in terms of love, which is very universal, and it speaks in terms of spirit. God of your understanding, spirit, Holy Spirit, love, undoing the blocks to the awareness of love, which is going to be the topic of today's episode. So I hope you find it helpful. In the introduction to A Course in Miracles, and I'll read this, it says, "This course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance." So love is our natural inheritance, and this course is aimed at removing the blocks to our natural inheritance, which is the presence of love. And then it says, "Nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists, herein lies the peace of God." Well, just a brief comment about nothing real can be threatened. Love cannot be threatened. It's the only thing that is God's creation, and it is whole and complete in and of itself. And we are, as the Course says, part of a sonship, S-O-N, ship, sonship, that is real and can never be threatened. The individual ego, identified as a person or a place or a thing, a personality, a body, that can be threatened, and that's the second line, nothing unreal exists. So it's a very radical existential spiritual path. Existentially, it says nothing unreal exists. That would be your personal identity. However, it's not asking that we give that up immediately or any time in the near future. It says use your body, which you very much identify as yourself, and use it as a learning instrument and a communication device. Use it in furtherance of what you really are, and that is the sonship, which is love. And that is very abstract and metaphysical. It's not physical and limited by time and space. Well, I hope I haven't confused you or me in the presentation, at least of the introductory remarks. I want to get back to removing the blocks to the awareness of this love that we're talking about. So we're talking about removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. And I think the thing I want to say at the outset about that, which is the topic of this episode, is that we don't do the removing. We're the ones that created, in a sense, or made up the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is our inheritance. And if we made up the blocks, and we're very invested in maintaining those blocks, maybe unconsciously or subconsciously, but we think they define us. They're our personality, they're our shortcomings, our defects, they're our strong suits, our talents. They individuate us, and they identify us as very special. And we don't want to let them go. But they really are, as the Course teaches, the blocks to the awareness of our true inheritance and our true identity as love. Unobstructed, unconditional, infinite, eternal. All of the special things that our blocks really involve, and we hold so dear to ourselves as our identity, prevent us from knowing that infinite love. So there's a conundrum there. There's a problem there, isn't there? I'm presented with an option to know perfect peace, which is the goal of the Course in Miracles, to know perfect peace. But I have to give up my special blocks to the awareness of this perfect peace or love. That's a dilemma. That's between the rock and the hard place, isn't it? What do we do? Well, firstly, we accept that we can't remove the blocks. I guess that was the point I wanted to make. There is a power greater than ourselves, which A Course in Miracles identifies as the Holy Spirit, who removes the blocks to the awareness of love's presence within our minds. We don't do it. We simply do an inventory, so to speak, of ourselves and identify these blocks. And they come up in everyday relationship experiences all the time. I'm impatient with somebody. I'm judgmental of somebody. I have an envy of somebody. I'm critical of somebody. You name the egocentric experience that we have in relationships, even positive ones. I adore somebody. I really think so-and-so. I idolize that person and I've put them on a pedestal. All those things are the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. And they originate from a sense of fear, because ego always involves a sense that we're not enough. There is something or someone outside of ourselves that represents, let's say, more than us, or they represent less than us. In either case, we don't see the unanimity. We don't see the oneness in the sonship. So there's a separation, which in itself mirrors the sense of separation that we have from God, the Creator, as extended through the Holy Spirit. So I guess I'm making the point over and over again. We have to let go of thinking we do it. The blocks to the awareness of love's presence must be identified, and then we let it go to God. We give it up on the altar within our minds. That much we do. So we don't make the effort, so to speak, to miracleize ourselves. This is A Course in Miracles, which would be letting go of the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, and the miracle is experiencing the love, full-blown in the holy instant, without any of the blocks dimming the light. So we know we're a part of, and we are all of, in a holographic sense, the sonship. And God's love and light shines fully on the sonship, but it shines very dimly on the individuated ego identity as a body, because we've constricted it. We've densified it to a point where it's all about me. And as I had mentioned earlier, then it comes out not as an extension of love in relationships, but as judgments or criticisms, or putting people on pedestals and idealizing them and idolizing them, which is not true love. So there's another step to this, and I just, again, I don't want to confuse you or me in this process, but when we let go of our individuated identity as ego, with these blocks to the awareness of love's presence, what we find is that we are the very Holy Spirit that is undoing those blocks for us. There's no difference, because it's all one. There's a unification in the purification process. We purify the blocks, and then we get to the unification sense or awareness that we are love. And then the Trinity, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, are no longer separate. They're separate for purposes of learning. I'll grant you that, and it's useful. So I say, I don't undo these blocks, the Holy Spirit does. But when the blocks are fully removed, I realize that I and the Holy Spirit are one. Not I individually, Yaakov, but I as the sonship. And I encompass and am holographically all of it, as are you. Well, this poses a great threat, as you probably are sensing, to the ego. And that's why A Course in Miracles is such a difficult sell, if you will, to the general public. Most people are not really ready, and I'll include myself in that a lot of the time. Most of us are not really ready to say, okay, God, I'm going to give up my ego identity with all my pluses and minuses, my negatives and my positives, and I'm going to surrender completely to you as your sonship, as the whole. And that really was the precursor, that resistance that I'm talking about, to the tiny mad idea that originated the belief in separation in the first place. The ego decided it wasn't getting enough love individually from God and wanted to have a special experience, separate and apart from other holographic, unified parts of the sonship as one. They wanted to have a special relationship, and that is impossible, because we can't undo what God created as whole and complete by separating it and fragmenting it. But when you believe in something as wholeheartedly as each of us do, then we see things separately. The observer, meaning the ego observer, determines the observed. And what we observe seems to justify my sense that things are fragmented and separate. And then I compound the mistake by saying, so God must have made a fragmented, separated world. And God knows me individually as Yaakov, and he knows you individually as who you think you are. And the Course is teaching us, in not very subtle ways, but very directly as it progresses in the text and in the workbook lessons, it's teaching us to let go of that notion. And as it says in the introduction, herein lies the peace of God. You and I have no idea the peace that we can experience when we let go of our special requests of love and comfort and release from our personal problems, and also requesting personal favors to aggrandize ourselves and make ourselves more abundant and prosperous individually. The Course makes that very clear, that in an ego sense, I really think I'd have to be taking away from others to aggrandize myself. And we rationalize that by saying, well, I deserve it. Or the ego says, I don't have everything that I deserve because you took it from me, meaning the other person. And so they have what they took from me, and conversely, I will have what I take from them. And the world that you and I experience is symbolic of that kind of ego thought system, isn't it? Wars, class warfare, all kinds of relationship problems, marital problems. There's always a division between the generations, seemingly. These are all seeming divisions that really only exist from an egoic perspective. So you have generational divisions, you've got gender divisions, you've got socioeconomic divisions, cultural divisions. All of that makes for an unpeaceful existence in the world. But that is the design function. That was the design function of the ego when it entertained seriously the tiny mad idea of separating from God to get special love treatment. It seemed like a good idea. Look at all the love that will be showered on me individually as Yaakov. And the thought was, which again is improper, God is so infinite in its love that it can provide that love to everybody. But then it said, on the other hand, only so much that I can get what I need first. And then I'd be concerned about others getting God's love and it being showered on them. Because the ego does not give, it only takes. So there's a subterfuge there in our thinking. People will pray for others. And I know that it's well-meaning when they do that. They pray for others. But what they may be doing is praying from an egoic position of separation, of separateness and specialness. So I, the person who's praying, will pray for you who are separate and apart from me. And it's typically aimed at your particular problems. So let's say you're having health problems. I may not be having that health problem, but you are. Can you see how that compounds the error of removing the blocks to the awareness of the sonship as the existence of all the Christ, not individuated egos who are aspiring to be the Christ? And again, it's a difficult lesson to be learned, but there's so many levels or lessons to this removal of the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. We can't fix it ourselves. We can't pray for others because it's adding to the compounding to the error of the thought of separation and multiplicity. We can't even conceptualize what it means as a sonship, where there's an abstract metaphysical idea of all, not individual, but all. In Hebrew, I'm thinking of the identification of God as the Ein Sof, the all of it, the everything of it, the beginning and the end of it, and beginningless and endlessness of it. That's our identity, since we're made in the likeness and image of God, not as a separate body which has a beginning at birth and an end at death. So we're so confused and backwards about our view of our identity and what we need that we don't make the correction. Let's go to a workbook lesson, which is another part of the Course in Miracles, and we can read maybe a little bit more about what this removal of the awareness to love's presence is all about. Removal of the blocks to the awareness. This is lesson 26. And it's a very powerful lesson that says, my attack thoughts, which would be ego thoughts, judgmental, separation thoughts, critical thoughts, adulation thoughts, my attack thoughts are attacking my invulnerability. So just by my waking up in the morning and having my everyday commonplace thoughts, I'm in the wrong thought system. I am not in the God-centered thought system. I am in the ego-centered thought system. I'm waking up. This body is rising from sleep. This body is getting ready for its day. There's already the thoughts of individuation. And so what I like to do is remember that God can correct that wrong thinking, that wrong-minded thinking, and I can't. So, and this is very good stuff. Say, God, your will be done, not mine. Show me your will and give me the power, your power, to carry out your will. May my plans today be really part and parcel of your plans. Show me what my plans should be. Well, I'm getting a little bit ahead here because it's very clear. It says, it's surely obvious that if you can be attacked, which is fear-based, you know, we're thinking we can be subjected right now, there's the cold and flu season. So if I feel I'm a body and I can be attacked, right away I'm in the wrong-minded thought system as an ego and a body. And if I think that I can be attacked by the flu or a cold or somebody else's ill will towards me, then it says, you don't think you're invulnerable. And if I don't think I'm invulnerable, I get to be right about it. I know I'm not invulnerable. And what happens? I catch the flu or a cold. Or I have relationships throughout my day where it seems that people are attacking me. So it's surely obvious to you by now that if you think you can be attacked, you are not invulnerable. You see attack as a real threat. But where did it begin but in my thinking? That is because you believe that you can really attack. Well, this gets back to the ground of being of the ego. Remember, we were talking earlier about the ego only takes. It doesn't really give love. It only takes it, or at least its facsimile of love. So if I believe that I can attack, conversely, I believe that I can be attacked. And what would have effects through you must also have effects on you. Well, that's the idea. If I can attack, I can be attacked. If you've ever paid somebody back in terms of revenge, aren't you then very defensive and looking over your shoulder? Because you're afraid they're going to get back to you. You've paid back, so to speak, and exacted your revenge, but you're afraid that they're going to get back at you again. And so it escalates. And so on an individual basis, we know that experience very well, and then on a collective basis, we know that because that's how countries act in terms of warfare. And there's never really a true peace, which is what the Course is teaching, unless we get out of that wrong-minded thought system and have the Holy Spirit, the right-minded thought system, make the corrections and remove the blocks for us. And we don't know how to do that. But it starts by saying, it's obvious to me now, God, that if I feel that I can be attacked, I think I'm vulnerable. And if I think I can attack, I must have firstly thought that others can attack me and vice versa. I must have thought I could attack to get what I think I'm missing. You know that old, it's sort of a cliche, but the old cavemen used to go out and kill their food and then drag it back to the cave. Well, that is the mentality in a symbolic way of everything that the ego conjures up for us. We're believing in, what do I have to go out and club over the head and kill so that I can bring it back and have it in my cave? And then we pave that over with a lot of civility and a lot of pretty bows and ribbons and niceties. But underneath it, it's kill or be killed, dog eat dog. And the effect of that kind of thought system is no peace, the absence of peace. Even if you go out and successfully club your what you think is your heart's desire and drag it back to your cave, then you've attacked, and you're afraid that you'll be attacked back. And so it says, my attack thoughts are attacking my invulnerability. So, and what would have effects through you must also have effects on you. And then it says, it is this law that will ultimately save you, but you are misusing it now. So what that means is that the power of my thinking and the shift that's potential in my thinking from egocentric, taking thoughts, to Holy Spirit, God-centered love thoughts, can then undo my sense of vulnerability and my proclivity to attack and my inclination to attack and then fear retribution and attack from others. It all begins and ends with me. And then ultimately we give that sense up, and then I'm not me anymore. I'm part of the whole, which is a real sense of unanimity and peace. So there's nothing to take from you because you are me. And there's nothing for me to gain because you are me, and I'd be taking from myself. This is also a very Eastern Buddhist view, isn't it? The sense of interbeingness. But I think A Course in Miracles takes it even further and says, not only are you interbeing with each other, you are each other. God only created you as the sonship. And the great rays of love and light that emanate from the source as God only shines on the sonship as an entirety, not as an individuated billions and billions of fragmented pieces. And each one is trying to get as much of the great rays as they can. That in and of itself is like getting up and thinking in the morning, well, I'm getting up. And I know that the Course also teaches not to deny the world, because that's an unworthy form of denial. So we do get up, but we then present in the altar of our minds all of our wrong-minded thoughts and say, I've got to start this day with more clarity. This day is dedicated to the sonship. This day is dedicated to the extension of all of the great rays that emanate from the Holy Spirit and from God as me. So there's a middle way. I'm saying still I'm going to be, the extension or the extendor of the great rays which emanate from the Creator. But ultimately, even that distinction, is taken up and corrected. Well, we've just gotten into a bit of this lesson. It's the first paragraph. My attack thoughts are attacking my invulnerability. Suffice it to say, we can be a kinder, more loving version of ourselves until we realize that all the blocks to the kinder, more loving version of ourselves are taken up and corrected by the Holy Spirit. And then we're just naturally kind and loving, because that's what love is. kind, compassionate, loving, trusting, uplifting, giving, and receiving. These are all words that are symbols of the underlying truth that we're talking about, but I hope that you're getting a real sense of the message of A Course in Miracles. You are love. I am love. There's a workbook lesson that says you and I are as God created us. We are love, not the individual body with individual needs. And the middle way that I was talking about can only be really integrated into our minds when we let go of the blocks. The middle way has to be the God's creation. It's not our good idea. There's a place in A Course in Miracles where it says, your best intentions aren't good enough. Fire yourself as your teacher and hire a true teacher, the teacher that God has created for us, and that would be the Holy Spirit. And in that, you'll learn your true identity as one in the sonship, one with the Holy Spirit, and one with God. Thereby, you learn that God's will is your will. There's no separation or distinction there. The ego can only identify with a separate agenda and separate will, self-will, that it typically runs riot. And it goes out and rampages, or as the Course says, sends out these hungry dogs of fear. And these hungry dogs of fear go out and bring back its prey. And what the prey is always a misunderstanding of what will make me happy. So it brings back the wrong prey. But how could it not? They're hungry dogs of fear. I'm afraid of my vulnerability. I'm afraid of the scarcity. I'm afraid of my attack thoughts, which I then confuse as your attack thoughts against me, and so on and so forth. Well, I think it's time for me to wrap up this episode by saying there is a way out of that conundrum, and that's to turn your attack thoughts over to the Holy Spirit. And by virtue of the removal of the blocks or attack thoughts or ego thoughts or the fear, you will know love and peace. Why? Because that's your true nature. And you and I are as God created us, one in the Spirit. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Namaste, shalom, and peace.
Mu nekk daal